Thank you for the kind words, Alison. I literally have 9 minutes 38, so I'm going to whittle through this. With any luck, we'll get through at least what I want to say here. So, Rashmi Misra, I'm based out of Redmond in Washington, US. I have the responsibility of all of our partnerships around data, AI, emerging technologies. As Alison said, includes all of our mixed reality AR, VR, autonomous systems, autonomous transport, metaverse, and Web3, and silicon. And if you look at all of those and how you weave a thread through all of those and how it comes alive in the environment that we're talking about, makes absolute sense in this new environment we're at. So what I wanted to spend some time on today was really, where are we seeing stuff that's coming up in this moment of AI, where we all know that generative AI is turning our world inside out, upside down. There is a revolution going on both with the data and with the AI models, and we seem to be moving at the speed of light in terms of the actual changes, in terms of tools, in terms of processes, in terms of capabilities of the models themselves. Obviously, there's horses for courses. I think the panel before really said it really well in terms of not one size will fit all, and so taking that into consideration, just looking at some of the sort of emerging capabilities we're seeing. I wanted to touch on what we're seeing in terms of the future of AI and Web3, but also how that really touches for us in terms of responsible AI, the verification and attestation, but also how we're seeing development in Web3 and verification and verifiability there as well. And then just some ideas on, emergent technologies being used that we're seeing up and coming as well. And so when I look at this future of AI and Web3 and really grounding this back to what we published in 2018, which was our framework of responsible AI, really coming back to the sort of fairness, security, privacy, making sure that it's actually embedded into the system engineering and making sure it's inclusive, and all grounded on transparency and accountability, it suddenly becomes very important that we do this at every stage of that AI cycle and at every point within that development environment, as well as the production inference side of the system as well. And it becomes even more important in certain use cases and certain industries, especially some of the FSI or the healthcare types of use cases, where it becomes even more imperative for people to be able to see not just the provenance of the data or the model environment, but also the exact steps that they have actually followed to get that output as well. And so when we see, just one aspect of this, and, there are multiple thoughts around how that AI pipeline looks today and how it's really evolving and what the shortcuts are, some things become a little bit more apparent in terms of where that amalgamation of these three environments happen. And it doesn't happen more than, say, FSI today, where we're really looking at, yes, it's nice to be able to use the models. Yes, it's nice to be able to use a conventional pipeline and look at all the different databases, including the vector databases and storage capabilities, weights and models, and all the other aspects of that pipeline. But how do we really embed it with that verification and validation that gives us that accountability and that transparency? And that's where the scale aspect comes in. And what we start seeing is emergent views of saying, well, okay, I have a model, I have an environment, but how do I now go and scale this so that I know that every part of my organization is using this with the right lens of the right bias filter on it, the right proof of the ML flow that they've actually used in terms of the processing of it? How do I actually know that they have followed the processes according to, say, the legal department or the HR department or other departments as well? And they may all have different filters that they need to apply at different stages. And that's where we start seeing emergent behavior in terms of, well, maybe I need to be able to look at some of the distributed ledger technologies or the blockchain technologies in order to be able to apply that cryptographic timestamping or proof stamping in terms of where it was stored, what queries were done on that data, and by whom, and whether that particular file was actually applied to the bias filter, for example, as well. And then we start seeing an evolution into the environment of further proofs of computation, where it starts getting a little bit more tricky to actually show aspects of what's really happening there, especially when you look at the more sort of unstructured environments in, say, maybe the sort of code aspects as well. And so you see that data verification attestation coming really real in terms of that process of scale. How that training data is created, how that verification is actually applied on there, and the attestation, but also that the fact that the output of that confirms that this has either been tamper-proofed or that I actually know that Joe Bloggs has actually managed to apply that filter at that certain time. And then in the adoption side, also looking at the fact that only certain people can actually be using some of those stages of that ML flow process or that inference machine as well. And of course, that opens out the inspection side of this, and particularly keen in areas such as audits, also things like fraud analysis, inspection of transactions, especially the high-value transactions. And we start seeing more and more of those in the use of those. But it's not just there. Obviously, some of those that start looking at the ability to preserve the privacy of individuals also want to make sure that we've got that enforced auditability, the increased trust, and the user empowerment to control what data gets exposed as well, either through ZK proofs or homomorphic encryption, where it can actually action on top of encrypted data without uncrypting it, or maybe methods of federated learning, where we start seeing the ability to be able to train without exposing all the data within where it's stored as well. And of course, the secure multi-party computation as well, that really allows those SMC capabilities to be able to share the data that they feel most relevant for them as well. And then really trying to build trust in AI, and then we start seeing a whole sort of plethora or spectrum of capabilities, not just the proof of SQL. I think you saw Space and Time on the panel before us talking about their cryptographic proof of SQL, but also making sure that we are able to offer this in an infrastructure, decentralized network as well, so that the data entries that really want to be stored in a secure enclave can also be cryptographically verifiable, and also provides both in-transit and off-transit data confidentiality as well. And there we have on our cloud the confidential ledger, but also a confidential compute framework as well that allows those secure enclaves. And then, of course, you start getting into the environment where people start looking at, well, how can I apply those EK to machine learning and its steps for verifiability as well? And I think we talked about, the panel before us talked about some of those as well. And then ultimately the sort of, how do I reduce my risk by actually diversifying where I'm running some of the model or the inference capabilities, training or inference capabilities? I know my ticker's going. But I also want to talk about how AI is transforming productivity. It's not just transforming productivity, but actually it's allowing people that, I talked about the responsible AI framework, the inclusiveness, being able to expose this capability to those who wouldn't be naturally coding and developing in Web3 environments, but also increasing quality and reducing errors as well. So increasing that efficiency, making sure that it's more secure and optimized for environments where, for example, where you want fewer bugs and vulnerabilities for sure. For example, how you're actually using smart contracts, how the smart contracts are able to interrogate your data sources, and how it's able to do that in a verifiable environment as well. I just wanted to quickly touch on certainly some of the examples we're seeing in the FSI world, and some of our partners that we've been partnering with, for example, LSEG, who've been really adding value into their market traders. being able to have that security embedded at the compute and infrastructure level, but also being able to access siloed data into one environment, being able to have a consistent, unified environment for governance, but also for interrogation of that data, and a one view of that for security and trust as well. And of course, the sort of aspects that we start seeing a lot in this market is, the sort of data analytics, being able to do risk assessment and mitigation, but also AI-driven analytics that are really uncovering hidden patterns and opportunities in that data as well. And all as they're trying to convert from an environment where digitization is still ongoing, but also digitization of processes that are evolving is going on, and that's where that verification, validity makes even more, becomes even more imperative in each of those steps as well. So just to summarize, we do have a lot of enthusiasm about how AI is bringing intelligence to the world of smart contracts and being able to enable faster deployment for code, and also opening out that accessibility to developers, but also very much in terms of either the DLT technology or blockchain, and how that represents and how it can be used even further into that layer of trust and verification beyond what you see on chain, but towards the other sources of data as well, to make that whole end-to-end cycle of what you're seeing in AI transparent and accessible. And then the synergies between all of these in terms of what we're seeing for really being connected, opening out, having control over your data, and making that a more sort of authentic future as well. So with that, I'm going to thank you. I think I'm already being beeped at here with red lights, so I did want to thank you.